Hi there. This video is part of a series about optimizing your browser setup for Google Chrome. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks to help you get the most out of your browser to help you complete your day-to-day work. And this is going to apply across any industry. Let's jump right into it. Let's dive right in. First off, right, if you're using the browser and you don't have a profile, creating a profile is one of the first things you're going to want to do when you sign up. In fact, it's going to require it. Let's pretend that we are starting it up for the first time. The first time you start up Chrome, it's going to ask you to create a profile. Now, you can log in with a profile or you can have one that's offline. My recommendation is always to use this with a Google Chrome account. Well, with a Google account. Let's say that you don't have a Google account. Well, here's a nice thing, right? You can create a Google account without having to create another email. You can use it. So my recommendation is one, have a Google account for personal and a separate Google account for work. And that allows you to have separate browser setups where you can flip between them, especially if you're using a shared device. That become particularly useful when you're doing things like saving passwords, setting up your bookmarks, looking at your history, grouping and pinning tabs, things like that. So let's jump into this, right? Let's say that we needed to create an account. You can go to sign in and then create account. And say for my personal use, unless you're going to use some of Google Workspace's features, and I'll say my name is 𝗪𝗿𝗍. I'm going to skip, say male. I'm born January 1st, 1970. Here's where the magic happens. It's going to ask you to create your email address. This is almost hidden. Use your existing email. And you can enter in your work email address for creating your work-specific account. That being said, right, if you have a personal email address somewhere else, you can use that as well. It works either way, but I do highly recommend tying these things together because of all the things that you can sync in your browser based on signing into this account. So that is a large recommendation. So let's go back though. Let's say that for whatever reason you don't want to continue the account. Knowing that your bookmarks, history, tabs, other elements aren't going to sync with the account, you can do it. Understand that if that device gets lost or dies or cleared, the things that you have in this browser could be unrecoverable. So you do have the option to proceed with that. So we'll have the label. I'm going to call this one test value, and then you're going to select a colorway here. Understand there's additional customization options. I'm going to pick this green and start this up and then open this wide. Now you're going to notice, because I'm not logged in, it's going to show me an error right at the beginning and say, hey, you're not signed in. So you have the opportunity, if things get going soon, right, you can sign in later. You see, looking at my other profiles, like, oh, well, I have personal work and I have some other user accounts that I use to log into this. It's also prompting me up here, hey, there's a new extension. If you have a computer that has another Chrome user account on it, it's going to, by default, try to install some of those extensions depending on how they were installed. And so you might get some notices like that and it asks for some permissions. You can click on that and it will ask if you want to enable it or not. I recommend, this Adobe one is one that always gets, they try to install for me. I actually recommend removing it and using the default experience for it. But let's kind of get deep into it, right? So we're in the environment now. This is our home page. It has no content to it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set things up in settings. So let's go to settings. It's going to prompt you with either this enhanced ad privacy, or depending on when you watch this, they may have a new notice later. And the first thing I want you to notice, right, when you log in, especially if you're on a work device, it's going to tell you up here if your browser is managed. If you're on a managed device, this is going to lock select features of Google Chrome based on the way that your system administrator has set it up. So if I show you some things and you go in your computer and you say, like, I can't access this, it's locked, there's a great chance that your browser is managed by by your IT or your technology team, and that they're restricting some of these features. And there can be valid reasons for that. But good to know that right off the bat when you start setting this up. So with that, right, if you were signed in, you can adjust here some of the syncing that you want to do. Personally, I don't like the enhanced spell check because I think it's a little bit aggressive, but you can choose what you choose to share. Autofill and passwords. Now, Google's password manager, as of the latest recommendations I've read, and this is June of 2025, it does have some vulnerabilities. If you choose this as a way to manage your passwords and autofill, uh, that being said, the best recommendation here is to use a third-party password management and instead turn this feature off, which is something you can do here in the settings and turn off that offer and turn off sign off automatically. However, if you choose to use it, make sure that two-factor authentication is turned on if possible. Make sure you're using strong passwords, which means they're not easy to guess things. They're not sentences. Ideally, they're random characters and numbers, and ideally over 26 characters. The more characters, the better in general. There's other videos online about crafting best practices for passwords. But if you're not going to use a better third-party service, make sure you have two-factor authentication on your accounts. This is where you can affect if it's going to offer to save new passwords, if it signs you in automatically. You see it has an integration with Windows Hello, and you can import an existing password file if you have one. Also, if you start using it and don't use it later, you have to get into here setting to delete that password management data. Moving back along here, you're going to see there's some other sections for filling in. In particular, for work purposes, the addresses and more can be useful, especially if you are filling in company info on order forms and things like that. Don't neglect this because this can be useful in form filling. That being said, if you need something more complex, I would recommend exploring Chrome extensions regarding form filling. If you would be interested in that, let me know down in the comments. Privacy and security, not a lot of recommendations I'm recommending here regarding work accounts. Performance can be tweaked if you like. For instance, this memory saver what it can do is after a certain amount of time, tabs can expire, or tabs can time out and become inactive. And what it will do is it will reduce what is kept in the memory of that tab. So we can talk about strategies of managing tabs in a later video. But if you are a person who needs to have a lot of tabs and all of them open and active and syncing at the same time, consider turning off this feature. Energy feature, also important if you're working on a laptop and you have a high performance setup that you need. When this conservation comes into play, you can see reduced performance on it. You also have options for additional preloading. And this can be useful when you're doing a lot of progressions, but keep in mind this can have an effect on memory, your short-term RAM memory. If you don't have a computer that has a lot of extra memory, I don't personally recommend enabling this. But if you are finding it's taking a long time for certain content to load, know that this is an option you can play with and enable to get some faster results. That being said, a lot of progressive web applications aren't going to necessarily support this, so use at your own risk. AI Innovations is, for instance, disabled on mine, but you'll see new features coming out here. And there are still some AI-ish type features that are accessible in the browser, even in locked down environments. We'll talk about that as we keep going down. Appearance is similar to what you saw on the earlier screen. This mode is referencing whether it's going to use light or dark mode. Mine is set to device, and I have a dark theme, but you can manually set it to a light theme or dark theme. I'm going to set it to a light theme for the rest of the video because I think that's likely the most common setup that you guys will have. But understand you can flip this to dark, and many websites and other applications will mirror this setting. Of course, dark themes can be easier on the eyes, especially for users who are looking at a computer all day. I enjoy a dark mode, but know that you can flip between them. You have a couple toggles here, including disabling the home button, showing the bookmark bar, which we are going to get to very soon, and showing tab groups in the bookmark bar. You have some other adjustments too you can make about the side panel. The side panel comes up with several other features such as the reading list is using Google Lens, and some additional features that we'll get to as we come through it. You're on hover preview. The font size and customizing font. These can be very nice, especially if you find fonts too small. You can go here and make fonts larger. Keep in mind, this is artificially adjusting the fonts that are rendered on various web pages and applications. This can cause applications to break in some unexpected ways. So again, use at your own risk, but thankfully, very low stakes, as you can come in here and change it back at any time. If you find the fonts too small, you can go in here and adjust that. Along with that, you can change the default page zoom. So you can just zoom in the additional page. These can be adjusted at any time as well. Up here at the right-hand menu, you'll see this zoom bar, as well as the full screen bar. If you ever activate this by default or by accident, F11 is the key that turns it on and off, as well as escape will close it for you. Nice sometimes when you're watching video or if you have separate dedicated screens. Search engine. This is an area that is frequently mislooked. Now you can change your default search engine here, and they don't have a lot of default options. But what becomes really powerful is when you go into it, you can add additional what's called site search. Now before we get into that, I want to point out some ones that they're calling out right here at the top. Your URL bar, also called the omnibar in this application, can allow you to search things directly in the bar without having to go through a number of these settings. So for instance, these bookmarks are things that you can type into the omnibar and then hit tab or space. I personally like to set this up with just tab, and then enter in your search criteria, hit enter, and skip a step of going to the page to do the search and execute the search directly. This is great for looking through bookmarks, or if you are a person that has many tabs, this can be a great way to search through your tabs or history of something you recently searched. So for instance, at bookmarks, and you'll see that it will try to autocomplete, and I could search for bookmarks. And if I had a test bookmark, it would show up down here in the results. Now, this is a new account, so bookmarks are blank. But notice that there is a syntax to it and that it can be customized. For instance, Gemini is Google Gemini, which means you can type prompts in for Google Gemini without even having to go to Google Gemini yet. So a couple keyboard shortcuts that are useful. Control-T opens a new tab and puts your cursor in the omnibar. Control-N opens a new window and puts your cursor in the omnibar. So Control-N opens a new window. I can go at Gemini. I can ask, what is today's date? And it's actually going to pass it right in and press enter and handle the result, which can be a great way to do a really quick question or search. You can see how quickly it got me through that whole process. Now, let's talk about adding site search. Certain websites have what's called a URL parameter. So for instance, Google has a search parameter. Now this is built in by default, but let's say I was searching for doves. If you look up here and you were to break all of this text apart, let's bring in a text pad and kind of break it out. Ignore all of this. You're going to notice there's a question mark, there's the letter Q, and then doves. So doves is what I searched for, and it's passing that directly into the URL. This setup where there's a name, an equal sign, and a value is called a URL parameter. and it comes after this question mark. When you are in an application or a website and you perform a search, especially if you perform a lot of searches there, or even navigating the site, start looking at the end of it and see if they have parameters. It's a very common way for them to reference certain things in the application and allow you to jump directly to that step. Because it uses a search parameter, what it means is any website that uses a search parameter like this likely will be compatible with Google's search site feature, which allows you to search in the omnibar in the same way you can call these other things from the omnibar. So I could go in here and I could name this, my special search. The shortcut is the text I'm going to type in. So let's say, now Google, we'll say I'll use Google, and then I'm going to put in my URL. And this part's important. It says put this %s in place of the query. When they say query, that means the text that you're going to search. So I searched for doves before. I'm going to select that. I'm going to do %s and hit add. And you're going to see now that exists here, my special search, Google, right? I can come back and edit it later if I have to. But here's what makes this so powerful, is now once I start looking for this on other websites, I can add the search for the website directly into my toolbar, and I can skip several steps of having to get to the bookmark, getting to the website, getting to the search page, entering my search, pressing enter, looking for the results. You can skip several of those steps, and instead, right, Control T to new one, Google, tab. You see that name is now showing up, my special search, doves. It passes doves in here to accomplish it. But because I've set it the way I've set it up, it's going to take any search query that I put in here. So, right, Google, and we'll say test page. Look, it's search for text page. I've skipped all these steps, right? I'm just being my best keyboard warrior self and getting to that search result faster. I'm reducing that time to record. So one I highly, highly recommend making use of. As we can continue kind of down here, default browser, that's going to be useful when you start using this to open various files and applications. On startup, this one's very important. I always recommend setting this up to continue where you left off. Now this is assuming that your workflow is such that at the end of the day, you kind of close any windows you're not going to be coming back to. This is nice because you close your browser, and when you open it back up, it's going to have all those tabs in the various organization you have right where you left off, and you can just pick up your work right where you were. This is especially great when you start combining this with multiple profiles, because it allows you to easily organize work or projects by profile, which can be of enormous benefit, especially if you start getting very complex search or your work requires a great depth of looking across multiple sources at one time. This can be a real lifesaver. If you ever don't do this, know that you can come here to history, and in closed windows, it will have a grouping of tabs like this, and it will let you restore the entire window. That being said, your history has to not have been cleared since that happened. My recommendation is flip it to this continue where you left off. A couple other things, right? We're going to skip languages. That is self-explanatory. Downloads are nice. If you're saving a lot of files and you have a file structure that you organize things into, turn on this ask to save where each file is before downloading. It's going to prompt you, and you'll be able to pick the folder through your normal file picker and save it into the appropriate folder. When I was doing processing, this is a lifesaver because you can save it directly into your borrower folder. When you're organizing things for a submission or a review. Otherwise, of course, you can change it here. Make sure it's an appropriate location. that you can easily find and access. And you may or may not want to disable that. The problem is this: if you keep this on, a large download notification shows up here along with a window popping up that will show you several recent downloads at once. This can be nice to turn off, actually. Accessibility is really only comes into play if these are things that you want, although I really enjoy the copied to clipboard notifications. These can be very important. In particular, continue running background apps when Google Chrome is closed. This comes into play when you install websites as applications, which we'll get to in a little bit, which can have several performance benefits. And then, of course, you can reset everything here. Extensions we'll use as a separate video later, but these are ways for you to extend Google Chrome's functionality or extend the functionality of an existing website or application with additional code that runs in the browser to execute your goal. So we've walked through all of these. Let's talk next about the browser bar, the bookmark bar, excuse me. The bookmark bar, available through several different ways, but the way I like to enable it is first go to my three dots menu here on the top right, go to bookmarks and lists, and show bookmark bar. You see also Control-Shift-B can let you toggle it, although I never toggle it on and off. The first way I like to customize this is I right click here and I'm going to disable show tab groups. Tab groups are a separate way of organizing, which we'll get to in a second, but tabs will remain up here and the groups will be up here. It reduces some of your workspace to also display it down here. I recommend removing that option. Now, you have the opportunity to turn this into functionally many useful buttons and features for you that support your workflow. Many of you are likely already using it and you might be aware, right? You can right click, add a page, you can enter in your information and save, and it will get added to this bar and they will continue to move left to right. Now, some important other features of what this can do. If you right click, you also have the option to add a folder to the bookmark bar. This is one people often miss. You can organize your bookmark bar in the same way that you organize your bookmarks in the menu, in which they can have folders and subfolders and sub-subfolders. One particular strategy I really like to take is to make a blank new folder and hit save. And you're going to see it takes up minimal space. However, I can expand this and fill this as much as I want. And this can be a great way to organize a massive amount of bookmarks, but in a way that's very easy to access. This is still only one click to get to my bookmarks, where my other option is over here to the menu, over to my bookmarks, right? Bookmark manager. By the way, if you're searching for bookmarks, remember, you can use the @bookmarks, which will autofill and search directly from here, and it'll come in your results. You don't ever have to come to this bookmark page. We're back to our tab. So you can organize bookmarks into this nameless folder and throw it in here. Now, you might notice there's an icon next to that new tab bookmark. If I right click on it, I can also rename it or edit it. And keep in mind, you can create bookmarks with no name. And what will then display is just an icon. So for instance, if I go to google.com and I click bookmark this tab, it'll ask me where I want to save it. And let's say I say bookmark bar. I can delete the name and it's going to preview here the icon for it. It's called the favicon. And this can be a very condensed way to add a lot of visible, easy to click bookmarks to your bookmark bar to make it quick to get to the tool you're trying to get to. Notice here, right? It's telling me again, hey, you're not logged in. Well, turn on sync. If if this session is wiped, if your computer gets wiped or breaks, you're going to lose this session. It's going to kind of continue to remind you that Google Chrome really wants you to be logged in to use it. I've talked about the benefits previously. But let's say I'm adding the bookmark. I don't have a name, which means it's only going to populate with the 𝗪𝗿 icon. And I'm going to put it on my bookmark bar. I say go, and look, here it is. This is all the space that bookmark takes up. And if I click it, it's going to open directly there. In the same way, right, I can keep, this creates a lot of space for me to display bookmarks with recognizable icons or abbreviated names to allow me to quickly jump to the things I need, or have several nested folders that allow me to very quickly navigate to the things I need. And anything deeper than that, of course, I have the ability to just open a new tab and search my bookmarks, which can be as extensive as I want, to get to my keyword. So use your bookmark bar tactically, have it enabled, use folders, use bookmarks without names, and just go by the icon. One limitation of it is this is quite small. If you have trouble seeing it or reading the text, it cannot be adjusted or made bigger. This is one limitation of Google Chrome. Firefox allows more customization of this, but Google Chrome unfortunately does not. Now, moving on from this, let's talk about another massive tool for organizing your work in the browser, and that's going to be browser groups. When you have a tab open, you can right-click on it, and you're going to see the option Add Tab to New Group. Now, assuming you have no groups that exist yet, it's going to pop up with this, and it's going to ask you to name the group, give it a color coding, and then you can hit Enter or pick to add a new tab or move group to new window. You can do some organizing here. We're going to call this Test Group 1. I'm going to make it yellow. Hit Enter. Now, notice this little tag now sits next to this window. What I can do is I can click this tag, and it condenses and hides all the tabs related to that group. So let's say I'm going to add some new ones. We're going to say www. New York Times, New York Times cooking. We'll add another one. We'll say weather.com. So I can have all of these tabs going and related to a project. And then when it's time for me to switch a project, I click the group, whole thing condenses down. They're not necessarily closed, but they're hidden and organized in a way that's much more condensed, which is great, especially when you have a lot of tabs open related to one project. The other nice thing about this is if I close and open this window again, right, this group will still be here. So you can use groups for projects that you're working on for multiple days, weeks, even years. Keep them in a group, and every time you open the browser, those groups will be there, and you can easily go in and open and jump to any of that content, and kind of accordion style work between them, right? Similarly, I can do this, and I can add a new second group, right? Group 2. And now I can really jump and expand these as need be. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you rely on these videos to stay up to date, consider supporting the channel using the link down in the description. See you next time.